Hello and welcome to this edition of Workplace Culture Wisdom, a conversation series with experienced leaders. And today I am delighted to be welcoming Alain Muise, who is the Chief Administrative Officer for the Municipality of the District of Argyle here in Nova Scotia. And we have worked together on a couple of different initiatives. And I'm just really pleased that you accepted my invitation to take part in this series.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we're going to start this conversation today with Alain offering your thoughts about this Peter Drucker statement of culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right. So I don't think he has a whole lot of experience in this area, right?
Hardly any at all.
Hard to argue with a gentleman of that stature, but he's completely obviously correct, or at least from my perspective. Look, I mean, we've both had experiences with strategy and how they work. And ultimately, the foundation around that strategy is culture and values.
Right.
And it's really to say that, the house won't be carried without the foundation. So, I mean, how many strategic plans have we seen that are basically built on the inside and in some ways perhaps bias confirming types of conversations with upper management that say, well, we should be doing this based on the experience, and is that actually the right direction? Perhaps, but is it inclusive of all? Not always, right? In terms of culture, I like to talk about culture and values together because I feel like values define the culture of the organization. Like, who are you as a person? And so when you have an understanding of who people are and what makes them tick, when you know the values of the group of people, you can then address the issue of culture and what do people want and why. Because if you know the why, I think that you can make adjustments. And if you're having that conversation with people and saying, like, I value being on time, I value accountability, I value those things play into the culture of the organization because that's how people act every day. And so if people can understand each other, then I feel that places a positive spin on culture. And so when culture goes a little bit awry, because it always does, where people maybe don't agree, they can then at least understand the values that drive other people. And I feel that humanizes the issue. And so this is just about dealing with people. It's about dealing with humanity and having compassion and understanding. And in that is the foundation upon which culture is built, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And one of the things that we talk about is how do we have those conversations to be able to get to that understanding? And do you have any particular strategies or practices that you use to be able to have the conversations that help people understand each other and where their values are?
Yeah, well, I stole a Brene Brown piece on lists of values. So passing that out and saying, okay, what are the 3 values that really drive you the most? Have them kind of work on it themselves, like these are personal values, and then come back and have those conversations with, okay, well, I value this, 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 you value this, this, this. So when we have these conversations about, policies, right? Because this is a policy-driven organization. Some people will value black and white, certainty, and some will value coloring outside the lines. That would be me. So so if you color something outside the lines, how are you actually speaking to your group that all of them want certainty? As a leader, I think that you kind of have to set aside a little bit, not entirely. You can't set aside who you are, but you set aside certain elements of that to say, okay, well, we have to have this conversation. So when we have bigger decisions, we have a leadership team meeting usually every week, and we say, okay, this is a decision. Okay, where does that fit within how we feel about this? And because we had that honest conversation, we can then just speak openly about how we feel.
And do you find that sets the example for other people to also speak up and speak their mind? What I'm thinking about is the notion of psychological safety, which is a term that's been used a lot more frequently over the last couple of years. And it is this idea that people are invited and encouraged to speak up. And so what you just described is setting the tone for some of that. And what's been your experience in terms of how people respond to that?
At the end of the day, there is work to be done. There's accountability to be had. And so the way that I see it is almost the opposite, is that if you want people to tell you how they feel or their limits to the work, the first thing you have to do is be very clear to them about the work. If you're delegating, if you're doing this work, if you're saying like, this is what I expect, this is what done looks like, these are the things. And if there's, and so that gives them enough information to say, why are we doing this? Especially with age gaps and less experience, which we're seeing that now. We're seeing new generations come in because the baby boomers, they do have to retire and the new ones come in. So it's really challenging for them to speak up. The only way that, the other way I would suggest is that maybe they are assigned a bit of a coach. So somebody that may be able to intercede for them when things are tough, because it's really hard. Like I've been here a long time, right? And I don't think I'm old, but I look old to 20-year-olds, I think. So they're not necessarily going to be like, oh, by the way, you've got 19 years experience, you're a chartered accountant, all these things, but you're wrong and you've been wrong for 20 years. Like that's not happening. They're not going to do that. But they might be able to say, okay, well, if I just had a coach, we just have somebody to talk to, not about gossip and rumor, but about ideas to intercede or to bring that information up to the proper places.
I want to touch on gossip and rumors in just a second, but first I just want to acknowledge what you just said here about two strategies for helping people learn to speak up, because the one is this role clarity piece, which I think is really essential for people to understand where they are in the context of the organization. So add that on top of the values piece that you were talking about earlier. And then the notion of providing people with a coach or a mentor, which is really important. And in a couple of these conversations with people, they've been talking about the value of middle managers in terms of being able to help maintain the tone of culture over time through doing exactly the kinds of things that you're talking about, the role clarity and the mentoring or the coaching piece. Talk to me about gossip and rumors and how you can handle, or how leaders can handle that situation inside of their organizations.
I feel like rumors and gossip can be poison to the organization. And however, we need to find a better way for staff to be able to vent, which is not gossip or rumor, right? So this is about us. So the first step would be, let's talk about the process and not about the person. So if this is a process issue, then let's talk about the process, right? If we're talking about the person, it's gossip and rumor most likely, unless there's an actual issue, right? I mean, you know, I'm not suggesting if somebody's being inappropriate, if they're doing something of a harassment nature that it shouldn't be raised. That's not gossip. That's an issue, right? So try to split the process from the person, right? What's the issue here? Like they're not working enough. You know, all they're doing is messing around. Well, the first part might be true, but the second part might be a story. So let's just try, the other step is to try to split out truth and story. Like, what's the truth here? You're frustrated. Okay, let's talk about that, right? And let's not talk about the other person. And if we're going to do that, then the best way to do that is, let's just come with me. Let's go sit down in that person's office, sit down and have a conversation. That's not gossip anymore, right? That's about just facing your issue, right? The best way to face your issue is to face it. Let's just like try to erase the judgment as much as we can and try to talk about the problem. So like, would you just like to assign work to that person? Would you like to be able to assign work to that person, right? And not, I want to say 7 out of 10 times, maybe 8, is that if you have those honest conversations one-on-one and say, look, I notice that you're a little low on work right now. Like, I really need the help. Is this something that you can help me with? Now that's teamwork. The direct conversation, as much as when I hear something like that, somebody coming in to talk to me about someone, I have to make a quick decision as to whether or not that conversation should happen with that person and not with me. I'm hearsay. I'm irrelevant.
Right.
This
I
is
love that.
this is an issue that you need to deal with
Right.
and deal with it. This is not dealing with the issue, right?
So
Um,
being direct and getting to the underlying, what might be underneath of the gossip or the rumors or the venting piece of it.
right. Just understand to try to separate the difference between the process issue and the person issue, because
Yeah.
people will blend them easily because you get emotional.
And this whole conversation borders on the edges of conflict and conflict that shows up inside of our teams or our organizations. And I'm curious about your views about how conflict contributes or detracts from workplace culture.
Uh, I think conflict is a critical piece of workplace culture, positive. Conflict has a negative tone. Conflict means I have the guts to disagree with you.
Mhm.
And I am not, as the leader, I do not carry a monopoly on good ideas. For me, conflict is healthy conflict is necessary. Having the faith to delegate those things appropriately, but also giving them the appropriate safe space to have conflict is necessary. It's not negative.
And what I'm hearing in what you're saying there is that through that conflict, you actually are able to draw on the skills and the talents and the ideas of more people because they end up out there in the space to be collectively looked at. And then that could lead to other ideas.
Yeah, I can assure you that the best ideas of this municipality probably didn't come from me. They came from me enabling that leadership from my staff.
Mhm.
So supporting them in the idea and asking them what I can do to help them in their idea, that's where I would ideally like to be. And I'm saying that purposefully because no leader is there all the time.
Right. And we are long, long past the days where one person has all of the ideas and all of the solutions and all of the answers to
Yeah,
move an organization successfully into the future.
yeah.
Are there any other thoughts or reflections you'd like to offer on workplace culture before we wrap up here?
I feel humor is very important in a conflict in a public setting. So I work for a municipality. I mean, we get everything here, right? Because federal and provincial governments are not necessarily going to have the same contact as we do. So we deal with all sorts of issues. We deal from fishing to aquaculture to tax collection, you name it, and everything in between. There is no human that won't have an emotional response to some of the things that are coming. We all have an emotional response. So the question is, what do we do with that energy? And humor, for me, is a critical piece because it has to come out. In my opinion, has to come out. So does it happen in humor? Yeah, it does a lot. And so hopefully not making fun of people because that humor is a little bit negative, but it's more about, like, well, this is, can you believe this happened? This is, something, and then you can joke around about it. And I think you need that release valve. People aren't as nice as they were 5 years ago. I'm just going to say it. And so we have to deal with that reality because we are not seen as people all the time, right? We are seen as government. So we have to keep that humanity inside the organization as much as we can so that we can take care of each other when these things happen.
I think it's a very valid observation that in general, there seems to be a theme of people being a little less kind to each other. And just when you mentioned government, like your government, when people reduce the humanity to that kind of language, then you're more likely to see some of these conflicts show up. And humor, love the notion of humor as well. It's a can be a double-edged sword depending on how we use it, but it's also when it's genuine and comes from a place of humility or release, like you were saying, then that is incredibly useful. Do you have any other, just on a last note here, do you have any other strategies or practices that you use to help the people who work with you and for you deal with either their own humanity or this release of tension?
This sounds a little silly, right? But every morning I go to every office and I say hello. What is that? It's not much, right? But I make it a point to, and it's everyone. It's every office, right? So nobody's left behind. And that is just to try to set the tone, right? Is to say, look, I'm here if you need me. Good morning. So I'm trying to set the tone of, if you have an issue, I'm here, right? Like we've all been, like, I think counselors encounter this all the time. They don't hear a complaint unless they're at the store, right? And so they're at the store and they're doing their stuff, and somebody's like, oh, I got a question for you. Right? Sometimes you got to be in front of people. So you have to take the time to be in front of people, even if they might say, well, you've got work to do. No, this is part of my work. This is work. I am working. And it's, not to shoot the breeze for, half hour. It's to just check in. And then that's the tone set. After that, it's just making sure that they know they can come in and have a conversation about something like
That
that.
is all about relationship building. And if that is not a leadership skill, I don't know what else is. And for me, it's not silly at all. I love that you said that because a long time ago in another lifetime, that's actually a strategy I used to turn around the organizational culture in a place where I was the executive director. And it was remarkable what a difference it made just to do this acknowledgement and validation of people like you're doing on a regular basis.
It takes practice, like anything else. It takes practice, right?
Well, this is one of the reasons why I invited you onto this series of the workplace culture wisdom, because I have, known you over the years, and I know that you speak with honesty and authenticity, and I really appreciate the wisdom that you brought to this episode today.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you asking. It meant a lot.
Go to worldviewprograms.com to learn more about our Healthy Workplace Culture Program options.